Well, I'll tell my story quickly. So I knew that when I was a volunteer 32 years ago, and I actually just returned to my Peace Corps country. I was a volunteer in Samoa, so I have a special place in my heart for the Pacific. I went back after 32 years, and it was an amazing experience. But the story I want to share is actually not my story. It's a story of someone else. The reason I tell this story is because I know from my own experience, and I imagine every single one of you, at some point in your Peace Corps experience has said to yourself, what am I doing here? Am I really making a difference? You know, how much of it, you know, how much am I actually contributing? You know, we all have doubts about that. And what I want to say to you is that the impact that you have and the difference you're making is not always obvious. In fact, it's usually not obvious right away when you're in it. But the impact is very obvious from some distance, from time. Because the things that we're doing, building human capacity, encouraging self-esteem, nurturing hope, helping people discover their own potential deep inside, and helping them be able to have the confidence and the skills and the hard work it takes to really nurture that. That all takes time, many, many years. And in hindsight, it's really easy to see in the people that you have interfaced with the difference that you've made. And here's a story to just illustrate that. So a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to lead a delegation to the inauguration of President Ernest Bai Koroma of Sierra Leone. So every time a foreign head of state is sworn in as a president, we send a delegation. I was representing our government at that inauguration. So after the inauguration, there was a state dinner, and the president sat me at his left side, so I was right next to him. And so we had a lot of time to talk. And I knew that he had grown up in a small village named McKinney in Sierra Leone. So I just was sort of making small talk, and I said to him, so how does a young man from McKinney grow up to be president of this country? And he said, well, there's a Peace Corps volunteer in that story. And I said, oh, really? Tell me about it. And he said, well, when I was a young man, 10 or 11, I wasn't any older than that, there was a Peace Corps volunteer named Sharon. And she came and lived in our community, and she was a teacher, but she also had an after-school program for the kids in the neighborhood. And she would offer homework help, but she also really encouraged us to do community service. She was the first person I can remember that talked about the importance of serving a cause greater than ourselves, of doing something for others for purposes of service. She really talked to us about service. He said, we had a community that loved each other and helped each other and what have you, but she really stressed how important concepts of service were. And so we would do things like clean up the village square and the markets and help little old ladies shop, or we'd go to the school and help a carpenter at the school repair the desks and tables the kids had broken. But it wasn't so much what we did, but the values that she lived by. And as I went through my life, I tried to be a better student because I thought of Sharon. And as I became a businessman, I thought about the values of justice for our workers and about service to others. And then I became president. I really tried to live those values. And I said to him, that is so beautiful. Have you shared it with Sharon? And he said, no. She was 11. I don't even know her last name. And I haven't been able to do that. And I said, I honestly to God, can't imagine what I was thinking. But I said to him, Carl, next time you come to Washington, let me know and I'll reunite you with Sharon. I got to tell you, we have terrible records from our early days because everything was in paper and, terrible records. But I said, I kind of thought, well, there's a good chance I'll be gone by the time he comes to Washington. So anyway, I left. Literally 10 days later, I get a phone call. Hello, this is President Ernest Bai Koroma. Good news, I've been invited by President Obama to Washington, D.C., and I can't wait to meet Sharon. Oh my God. God, what have I done? I now have to find Sharon. So I called our Office of Third Goal and Return Volunteer Services, which you all need to connect with when you're completing your service. But anyway, they're the people who have the records, and I told them about my dilemma. And they said, well, I don't know, but we'll see what we can find out. And I said, please find me a Sharon. And like, he wasn't even sure of the dates. He was like, oh, 64, 65, 66, around that time, maybe 63. I'm like, oh God, that's terrible. Anyway, so a couple hours later, they called me and they said, well, we found a Sharon, and she was a volunteer in McKinney from 64 to 66, and we actually have contact information. So I rung her up, called her on the phone. I said, Sharon, hi. I'm calling from the Peace Corps, and I explained what happened. And she said, oh no, that was definitely not me. She said, I am certain that none of my kids ever became president. And I also don't recognize that name. And she also said, look, I am not a person who likes to, seek the limelight. I'm a really kind of a shy person. This is all very uncomfortable for me. I really am not interested in this. I'm like, Sharon, please, I need you. I beg you. And I said, you don't have to be like that, Sharon. You can maybe just represent all Sharons. Or at least represent Peace Corps volunteers from Sierra Leone around that time. And she's like, I'm like, please, I'll pay for you. I'll take you to lunch. Anyway, eventually, she very reluctantly agreed. Now, I just want to stop for a moment and tell you about Sharon. Sharon was an amazing volunteer. She completed her service, and she spent 40 years teaching in the south side of Chicago in some of our nation's roughest schools. She was personally assaulted on a number of occasions. She went to the first school in the whole country that had a metal detector. And she won a number of teaching awards because she was a phenomenal teacher. She was really a hero. But sort of an unsung hero. She wasn't someone who really ever tooted her horn, but she was an amazing woman in and of herself. Anyway, on the day he was coming, at first my idea was that I would have him come and we'd have this great reunion in front of the entire Peace Corps staff, which is like 600 people. And she said, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. She says, because remember, I am not the Sharon. So I said, okay, we're not going to do that, but he will speak to our entire Peace Corps group, and you can just be in the audience. She said, okay, that's fine. I said, well, we'll have a reunion beforehand in my office. So on the day of this meeting and big event, she comes early, and you could see that she was completely terrified. She was holding a massive photo album. I swear it was like this, and she was holding it in front of her like a shield. And she came in, and my office is kind of about as big as this, all the way to the back. And she came in and she went to the farthest corner. Like she was trying almost to hide behind the potted plant or something. She was so just not wanting to be there. And she had her book. So then he comes in, and he's like 6'3", really dignified, standing proud like heads of states do. He had these long legs, and he's followed by a general, a 5-star general, who's half his size, literally. He's like carrying his bag, having to run because his legs are so long. He walks into my room, he spots Sharon, he says, Sharon! And he walks across my room and throws his arms around her. And meanwhile, she's like this. And then he said 2 words that changed everything. He said, Tourist Street. Tourist Street. Torrey Street was the name of the street where she lived, and she was the sheriff. She was the sheriff. And they sat down on my couch, and she pulled out her photo album, and there were photos of him as a young man that he had never seen. No one had a camera in 1964 in villages in Sierra Leone. And they sat there on the couch, and she said, she was very honest, because I would have said, oh yeah, I remember you, yeah. She said, which one are you? And he pointed to his picture, and she said, oh, you were naughty. I can't believe it. But they sat there, and he was weeping and weeping. There were pictures of his grandfather who had died like 35 years ago, pictures of his mother as a young woman who coincidentally had just passed away 2 weeks earlier, pictures of friends that had, were now dear friends, but they had no photos of that time. And he sat there on my couch and told her about how important she was. And it wasn't what she taught in class, but it was the values she lived by. It was her constant encouragement of them, of just trying to help them find their best, help them be the people they could be, not only for themselves, but for the good of their country. And one thing she identified, once she figured out who he was, she figured out that his mother was in fact her really close friend. They called him something different because they have nicknames all the time. That's why she didn't recognize his name. But his mother had been the one that had taught her how to wrap her headdress and shop in the market and cook the Sierra Leonean food and told her which guys to keep away from. Don't take her in too much, but these ones go to church so you can hang out with them. So she had been the one that had been so important in her life. So she was able to tell him how important his mother had been to her. And that was so poignant to him because he had just lost his mother and was still deeply grieving her loss. So it was this incredibly beautiful moment. And then they went downstairs and he gave the most beautiful half-hour speech all about Sharon and what she meant to him, but also about the impact of Peace Corps over 50 years in Sierra Leone, which has been one of our longest running programs. It's just, I love the story because what it shows is that we really never understand our impact. We plant seeds for trees under whose shade we will never sit. They're long-term seeds, but they can be seen in the people who you encourage, whose potential you nurture. That potential is there. You're not giving them potential, but you're helping them discover the confidence and the self-esteem that is needed for them to become the incredible, beautiful people that God has made them. And they remember you for that. I travel a lot, and everywhere I go, I meet people who can tell me everything about their Peace Corps volunteer, even though it was 40 years ago, or 20 years ago, or just last week. They are watching you, and they care about you, they love you. And believe it or not, you're making a huge difference in their lives in ways that you will never see, unless you somehow have this miraculous experience of being able to go back, or reunite with them. So, I leave you with that story in hopes that when you're having those tough days, and there are many tough days, that you will think about it and think about what an incredible opportunity you have to change lives, even as you are transformed yourself. And I will also say that every single Peace Corps volunteer I've ever met, including myself, has said that they got more than they gave. That the love and support and encouragement that you've got from your community is so much greater than anything you were able to impart. And I also believe that's true. And that's what I think about Peace Corps. We always hear these cliches about this whole is greater than the sum of its parts, but I really believe that with Peace Corps that is in fact true. So I just leave you with that because I know there are tough days. I know there are times when you miss your family and your friends, and no one shows up at the meeting that you planned so hard, and your language skills are just really not getting there, and your best friend got married and you couldn't be there. I mean, there are days like that. There's so many other wonderful times when things do go as planned, where someone likes, you can do an activity together that really does energize, some of those kids. And that's why I love the focus on youth, really, because young people are the ones that I think, are most able to nurture and guide and energize, and they have such fantastic ideas. One thing I love about Vanuatu is you're really an innovative host. You're not afraid to think outside the box. You've got a very dynamic country director and really great staff. And they're all willing to think differently, and I really love that because we live in a very, fast-pacing world, changing, fast-paced, whatever.